I'm going to continue with some of the recommendations of the Buddha. He talks about an eightfold path. It's a prescription for happier living, more centered living. And there are eight steps to it. And today we talk about right effort. In other words, what can you do for your own spiritual journey? Because there are many things that you can do. I would say wise teachers are hard to find, but even harder to find is a seeker of spirituality who is responsible, using their brains, using their wisdom to follow this path properly. So when the Buddha talks about the right effort, he's talking about what you can do. What can you do as a seeker to make this spiritual path more effective? And he recommends 4 things in terms of right effort. Number 1, he says, when you detect that some destructive, wrong notion is coming up and surfacing from your subconscious mind, as you see that tendency coming up, don't give it energy, don't dwell on it, and let the seed of destructive desire or tendency go back into the subconscious. So let's say you love smoking marijuana and you see the tendency beginning to come up, or the tendency for, let me see what our chat people are talking about here. Okay, somebody's just saying hi. As you see a tendency coming up, it could be lust, it could be drugs, it could be anger. The Buddha says, as you see this tendency coming up, don't dwell on it. Take your attention off of it so it goes back into the subconscious. His second recommendation is, if you are already angry, lustful, mean, wanting to hurt somebody, then don't dwell on what's already there so that it goes back into the subconscious. The third recommendation is, if you've got some very good traits and qualities right now already present, feed them, water those seeds so that you become even better, even stronger. And finally, he says, if from your subconscious mind there are some good tendencies coming up, water those seeds by placing attention on them so that they come up from your subconscious. The Buddha thinks of your subconscious mind that controls 80% of your life. The Buddha thinks of your subconscious as a garden. And he says, you can either water the garden with attention or not water it by taking attention off of it. So look at the 4 components of right effort. Number 1, if there's some negative notion coming up from the subconscious, don't dwell on it. Take your attention off of it so it goes back into seed form. Number 2, if you already have some bad quality present, don't water those seeds. Take attention away from it so it dies down. Thirdly, if you already have some good traits, qualities, instincts, water those by placing attention on them and fostering them. Finally, if you have some positive notions trying to surface from your subconscious mind, water those seeds by placing attention on them. And then, what are the enemies to right effort? What are the 4 things that ruin your right effort on your spiritual path. One is just lust and sexual appetite. And Buddhism, like the Vedas, says you cannot kill your sexual drive. So if you're being distracted by lust, then you cannot kill that by force because it's part of your human body. What do you do with lust and sexual distraction? You simply apply mindfulness to it. In other words, you start following the breath. Let's say you're going down the street and you're already married and you see somebody very, very tempting. So the Buddha says, don't kill that because you're not blind. You can look at the opposite sex, but apply mindfulness to it. It's like, am I here? Am I breathing? Am I in the present moment? How am I feeling with this lust? In other words, just shine the projectors of mindfulness on the lustful moment. And the Buddha is a deep believer that if you apply mindfulness to any powerful negative or hurtful tendency, the mindfulness will get you down to the roots of it. Once you understand the roots of it, it starts to get weaker within you. For example, addiction to pornography, if we apply mindfulness to it, we might realize that, I'm feeling lonely. That's why I'm watching it. And then you apply more mindfulness to it and you say, I'm feeling unattracted and I'm hopeless about finding a mate. That's why I'm watching porno. And then you apply more mindfulness to it and you realize, I don't really like myself. And because I think I'm unlikable, that's why I'm smoking pot and watching porno. So just apply mindfulness. Start breathing. Ask yourself, am I in the present moment? And follow the breath when you're very, very tempted. Don't try to kill sensual desire. That just becomes an unnecessary battle. So some of the obstacles to right effort. One is lust, sensual desire. Another one is laziness. Some people just say, Kambiz, I just don't have the energy to get up, sit on my meditation cushion, and meditate twice a day. I'm too lazy. I procrastinate. Other people say, I have no faith in God. I have no faith in the energy that you're calling the God force. The Buddha says, if you have no faith, that's okay. Investigate the teacher and investigate the teachings even deeper. The Buddha says that applying too much effort on your spiritual practices without having any sense of ease, joy, and interest means that there is something wrong with your spiritual practice. Look at my fingers. Ease, joy, interest. If you don't have these three, you are expending a lot of energy on your spiritual journey, but you're not deriving the benefits. If you're with the right teacher and the right teachings, eventually you're going to feel ease, joy, interest. But I'll be honest with you regarding one thing. I'll compare your spiritual progress to a rocket ship taking off from the ground. When a rocket ship wants to take off from the ground, it burns about 70,000 tons of rocket fuel to defy the Earth's gravity. So it's very heavy when a rocket ship is taking off. But once it goes beyond the Earth's gravitational force, the captain can just shut off the rocket engines and get into the influence of the gravitational pull of a planet called meditation. And the planet meditation will start to pull your rocket ship towards it. And in my experience, it takes some people about 5 years to shut off their engines and start to approach meditation with ease, joy, and interest. Before that, your rocket engines are on and you're expending a lot of energy to have even a moment of pleasure in meditation. Now, when I mention 5 years, I'm mentioning some of the worst case scenarios. But let's be honest about one thing. All of you on this call have an ego. The ego wants immediate satisfaction if it is to continue the spiritual practices. If the ego doesn't see ease, joy, and interest, the ego is not going to support your meditation. And the Buddha says, working hard, forcing yourself to sit on the meditation cushion, leaving sex, doing all vegetarianism is no good. The Buddha says, if you go beyond your psychological and physical capabilities towards a spiritual goal, you're going to ruin your spiritual journey. I'm going to give you an example. In the 1960s, the rock bands, the Beach Boys, and the Doors, and the Beatles were all students of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the founder of TM. At one point, the Beach Boys and some of the Doors were in the south of Spain practicing TM meditation with Maharishi. And Maharishi said to the Beach Boys, "You're not boys anymore. Why do you call yourself boys? You're men. Grow up and throw these genes into the Mediterranean. Grow up." Now, some of the 20-year-olds hearing that talk thought that Maharishi meant that all these 20-year-olds should throw away sex with their genes. And a bunch of 20-year-olds decided to put away sex for 1 year. At the end of 1 year, these 20-year-olds were completely crazy, completely out of control. Why? Because that level of spiritual practice was way beyond their capabilities at that point. You see, if you want to become a vegetarian, we should be training your chakras so that your system and your mind can handle vegetarianism. If you suddenly go from steaks to just cabbage, you might go crazy. You might not, but it depends on your capability. If I take you folks to a 10-day meditation program, some of you may not be able to handle that. The heat of Kriya Yoga. The same thing with sex. You know, you need to get to a point where your only desire is lovemaking with one person. But it's taking you time to get through the energy of lust. So if we suddenly say no sex, then it's very hard on you, physically, psychologically. I think the best thing you can do is to keep the proper intention of right effort. Right effort means I have an inner God. I want to be calm. I want to be contented. I want to have love in my heart instead of hatred. And I surrender myself to a kind teacher, to great teachings, and the God force. Beyond that, I don't know. I'm going to surrender it to something else. And I don't want you to kid yourself. Any kind of spiritual, personal progress requires that you come out of your current comfort zone. Every person has a set of beliefs, habits, and defense mechanisms. That's your false self. And then, if you have the proper courage, you start to get into spiritual practice and you start to come out of your comfort zone. Every time you come out of your comfort zone, it feels uncomfortable because you're trying new beliefs, new habits, or your teacher is saying something and you are surrendering your stubborn belief to the teaching of the teacher, which is very hard. So don't go beyond your capacity. The other thing I recommend to you is learn to manage your energy on the spiritual path. In other words, sometimes you need to have some fun. Even during a meditation retreat, you need to have some laughter, some dancing, or you need to hug your lover. What I'm saying is, please manage your energy during the spiritual journey. Some fun, a nice car, enough income, some music, with the intention of reaching the highest version of yourself. That's a long-term intention. Some people have the wrong goals behind their spiritual journey. Somebody said to me, Kambiz, I got this great marijuana from Mexico. And when I smoke that stuff, my Kriya Yoga is something else. And of course, you know, and I know that drug-induced ecstasy was not the goal of Kriya Babaji Nagaraj. His goal was, why don't you stay sober, surrender yourself to your breath, establish a relationship with the incoming life force in the breath, land in the present moment, and see what kind of joy you can derive. If marijuana is giving you some fun in Kriya Yoga, that's not the intention of Kriya Yoga. I met another person who was very, very afraid of intimacy. So that person took the teachings of detachment and meditation in seclusion. She locked herself up in a studio apartment for 6 months, decided not to call her boyfriend back, and called that spiritual detachment. And that's a misinterpretation of detachment. So all I'm saying is, if you're not careful, your ego might take the Buddha's lesson on right effort and reinterpret detachment to lack of intimacy. Or if Kriya Yoga says there is great bliss to be realized through inhalation, you might inhale marijuana and say, yes, there is great bliss involved in inhaling hashish. So I have met hundreds of students whose egos reinterpret spirituality for their own interest. If you want the true meaning of yoga, You should be in love. You should be very happy that the sky is blue. You should be making good money. As long as you need it, you should be enjoying your sex. As long as you need it, you should be dancing. And as long as you absolutely need it, eat your steak until your chakras and consciousness get to a point where your digestive system is rejecting steak. If I have a latte coffee, the marrow of my bones are like this from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Just one latte with 80% milk. So that doesn't make me a saint. It's just 27 years of breath cleansing the energy centers. You have the same potential. Nobody's better than the other person. It's just preparation. But the Buddha says, manage your energy on the spiritual path. Don't take all of your joys away. And your meditation should be giving you ease, joy, and interest. If you are not deriving those, you are not expending proper effort on your spiritual journey. I also want to tell you something else. Some of my greatest and most courageous students have been people who got into spirituality because of pain. Pain is not a bad thing spiritually, if you think about it. For example, let's say that you grew up disliking yourself. It wasn't your fault. It was some ways in which you grew up, you didn't learn to love yourself. And now it's become part of your conditioning. Okay? Then we say in spirituality, use that pain, use Kriya Yoga, use your yoga asanas, use coming full circle, and investigate your pain. If you're a real hero, you would use your suffering not to give up. You enter your spiritual practice with some suffering. You use the teachings and the guru and your discipline to investigate suffering. When you investigate deeply, you start to see that you don't like yourself very much. You go beyond that and you get to mama and papa. You get beyond that and you get to the point where on the day that they divorced each other, you as a 5-year-old came up with the wrong perception that it was my fault that mama and papa got divorced. So never mind my examples. All I'm saying is pain is nothing to be ashamed of. Use pain to start your spiritual journey, go deeper and deeper, investigate until you realize that I am, have always been, and will always be deserving of the best that life has to offer.